It rises due to convection. A heating cable is installed from 30 to 50 centimeters. 10 centimeters are covered. Straw, shavings, horse manure. We last for 4-6 hours without additional heating while our soil cools down from 25 to 18 degrees. If we heat the soil to 40 degrees, everything will die there. Good day, dear friends. We have been asked quite often about heating the soil in greenhouses, and today we decided to consider this issue in more detail. What is the nuance? If we take a greenhouse, quite often, the main type of heating is used when we use either radiators or a fan heater to heat the air. It heats here and there is heating here. This is how greenhouses are heated. These are the main types. It is called bathing heating. When we heat the air, it rises due to convection. All the warm air will accumulate at the top. Here it will be plus 25, here plus 20, well, here plus 18 degrees. Due to the heating, all the air will rise up. As a result, the soil will be quite cold, and in winter if we only heat the dome, then we may have heat in the greenhouse, but the soil will be cold, due to the fact that it cannot heat up from below. Therefore, additional soil heating can be installed in greenhouses. If we install here, for example, we draw like the soil heating, then it heats the soil. Its temperature will be approximately plus 20 degrees and the balance will already change. That is, when the soil is additionally heated, then, firstly, the thermal balance is leveled, we will not have temperature drops. That is, it is cold at the bottom and excessive heat at the top. Also, our soil will be heated and the root system will be much better to grow and gain moisture, develop. There are also naturally savings on heating the greenhouse. Therefore, in many greenhouses, they are often combined, that is, both dome heating and soil heating are installed. Now, what we understand in more detail, there are several types of soil heating. The first is electric soil heating, the second is water soil heating, the third is air soil heating, and the fourth is biological soil heating. Electric soil heating is when we install a heating cable directly in the ground, under the root inhabited layer. That is, at a depth of about 30 to 50 centimeters, a heating cable is installed and, accordingly, heats the ground. This is electric soil heating. Water soil heating is when directly water floor pipes are installed again under the root inhabited layer and water flows through them, and they, accordingly, heat the ground. Air soil heating is often built on the basis of heat-cold accumulators, and due to the fact that warm air is driven into the ground, it, on the one hand, warms the ground and, on the other hand, we again drive the excess hot air into the ground masses, where we accumulate heat. Biological soil heating is when we dig a trench or lay wood waste in trays, straw, shavings, horse manure, paper. We pour hot water to start the fermentation process, and due to this biofuel starts to work and it can heat the ground for quite a long time, from a month to 3, due to natural biological synthesis that occurs during fermentation. So now let's take a closer look at how soil heating is usually installed. If we consider, for example, electric soil heating, we have, for example, a trench. It will be up to 50 centimeters deep. Insulation is laid at the bottom with the possibility of drainage so that water can easily pass through it. Then 10 centimeters of sand are poured, then a galvanized mounting mesh is laid, to which the heating cable is directly attached, then another 10-15 centimeters of sand are poured and a protective mesh is installed, which prevents mechanical damage to this cable. And then there is already a root inhabited layer, that is, about 30 centimeters. The heating cable is connected to a thermostat, that is, a sensor is installed in the ground and the thermostat automatically maintains the required temperature. Water heating is done in exactly the same way. A mounting mesh is laid, a water pipe from the warm floor is attached to it, and then it is also covered with sand, and then a protective mesh is installed in order to prevent damage to our pipes with a shovel or something during digging or some moments. Next, the comb is assembled. All these sleeves for heating the water floor are connected and the temperature sensor is also installed, and already through the thermostat we regulate the temperature. Air heating of the soil is when we install pipes under the trays, also at a depth of 30 centimeters, and with the help of fans we take air from the top of the greenhouse and drive it into the ground. What are the pros and cons of these systems? That is, firstly, when we do air heating it into the ground. Its advantage is that during the day we take hot air from the greenhouse and drive it into the ground. Thus, we accumulate heat in the ground. They are also called heat or cold accumulators because during the day they cool the greenhouse due to the intake of hot air. We accumulate it in the ground. At night this heat is used for additional heating of greenhouses. We can accumulate in the ground in the range from 18 to 25 degrees. If during a sunny day the accumulators will work, then when we have 0 degrees at night only due to the heat that we have accumulated in the ground, we can last for 4 hours without additional heating. That is, for 6 hours we last without additional heating while our soil cools down from 25 to 18 degrees. For plants, a drop in soil temperature to 18 degrees is absolutely natural because they are used to living in a mode that during the day the soil is warmer, at night the soil is colder. The advantage of this system is that we, without additional costs for heating, use natural heat factors that, in principle, we lose during the day, and which are harmful to us during the day. That is, we simply accumulate excess heat in the ground. This can be compared to a car, like a hybrid. That is, when braking, excess energy accumulates in the battery. Just the same here, it turns out that with an excess of solar heat, we accumulate it in the ground. Quite an effective property, and this allows up to 20% with conventional air heating of the greenhouse without additional costs for heating the soil saves up to 20%. The disadvantage of such a heating system is that if it is cloudy outside and the temperature in the greenhouse is plus 18, then we cannot accumulate any heat. We definitely need an additional source of energy to get this heat from somewhere. In winter, with the help of heat accumulators alone, we will not be able to heat the greenhouse. That is, we can accumulate some heat and use it. I have not seen biological fuel in professional greenhouses. Often, biological soil heating is used in greenhouses when a trench is dug and organic waste, wood waste, horse manure are poured there. This is all covered, then poured with hot water, and it heats up to 70 degrees. The fermentation process starts, then this temperature drops and it can then be maintained for a rather long period, about 2 to 3 months to a temperature of 20 degrees. This method is used on beds, in greenhouses, in principle, quite extensively. We simply get fertilizers as a result and no one has to pay for the calories that are spent on heating the soil. Questions that are often asked about heating: is it possible to heat a greenhouse all year round with water and electric heating? This cannot be done because the power that we can put into heating the soil varies within 100–150 watts per square meter. That is, if we have greenhouses, for example, a stoker of 100 square meters, and we need about 30 kilowatts to heat such a greenhouse normally and pass through the winter period, we can hide only 15 kilowatts in the ground. For several reasons. The first is that the high power that we put into the ground will lead to the fact that we will simply overheat the ground. We will turn living humus into dead humus. What is the nuance? For example, we put 300 watts per square meter into the ground and we need to raise the temperature when it is 20 outside. In the greenhouse we need to maintain a temperature of plus 18 plus 21. We need to heat the ground to about 40 degrees so that we can give off the amount of heat that we need to heat. If we heat the ground to 40 degrees, everything will die there. I have seen such situations when the earth was simply turned into asphalt. That is, the earth was so hard that moisture left from there, everything died there. Plants cannot live in this mode. Therefore, no more than 150 watts per square meter of power is usually laid for heating the soil. The second question: in what cases can you not install soil heating in greenhouses? There are several cases when, in principle, you cannot install soil heating. This is when, for example, we have raised trays. They are torn off from the ground and they additionally, that is, have a certain layer of drainage insulation so that moisture can easily leave. Then, even if the soil is very cold, that is, the winter is cold, the beds will be separated and they will strive for the temperature that is in our greenhouse. The trays do not get cold to a temperature of 10 if they are raised. If the temperature outside drops below 10, then the soil begins to cool down quite a lot. This was noticed when in greenhouses where there is a warm floor and raised beds. According to feedback, they were only used in severe cold weather. because when the temperature dropped to 20, they additionally turned on soil heating. If the temperature is above -10, around 0, in principle, soil heating did not work. The soil was there 1821, in the greenhouse it was always, that is, the temperature was 21-23. Therefore, if our soil is raised and if we do not need to go into the winter period and the temperature is below 10, we can do without additional soil heating, although in such cases heat accumulators, that is, work quite well and give an additional margin of safety. How effective is soil heating for greenhouses? The fact is that in greenhouses the normal cycle of temperature regimes is disrupted, that is, soil and air compared to open ground. In open ground, plants know that if we have already entered May, then the sun comes out, the temperature rises to +25 degrees, the soil naturally warms up to +18. In greenhouses, the situation is such that the air is heated artificially, we make artificial lighting, the soil is in contact with the ground, then we cannot naturally warm the ground without sunlight. If we have winter, we do not have sun, we only have dome heating, that is, air heating, fans are working, fan heaters or radiators. Then there is no radiant energy that will heat the ground and heat will accumulate in it. Due to the fact that the air heats up, this is again problematic because warm air rises up. The soil is constantly watered and it cools down additionally when we water it, it evaporates and it cools down, we have additional heat loss. Therefore, in the greenhouse, the soil is always, as it were, colder than on open ground in a natural environment in the warm period. And for the development of the root system, it simply takes more energy from the plant, which would go to the growth of green mass, that is, this energy goes to the root system and therefore, naturally, without additional heating of the soil or root system, the yield falls, about 20% lower yield will be obtained without additional soil heating. There was also a question, what is the cheapest way to heat the soil? Naturally, from the side of starting costs, the cheapest is biological, but it is the most laborious. That is, you can do it in a greenhouse, for example, they're 5 by 10, you can fill the beds, every 3 months to fill up, mix, but this is a rather laborious process and, in principle, I have not met such systems in large farming greenhouse complexes. In general, due to high labor costs, this method is rarely used. In second place in terms of cost, I would call it air heating due to the installation of pipes. There, in principle, ordinary pipes, fans are installed and air is driven. Next is electric heating, here the cable is thrown and, in principle, only a thermostat is connected. Fourth is water, that is, it is quite expensive because in addition to the pipe that is thrown, you need a comb, you need all these connections, you need automation. And to the question of what is the most economical soil heating, again, biofuel, that is, we do not spend anything. In a biological reactor, there is a fermentation process, bacteria release methane and so on, that is, due to this, no additional costs except at the start to fill up this whole thing, that is, mix, start the process were 3 months. That is, the first is biological heating, the second is air because we only spend on air movement and we accumulate heat that is in excess during the day, at night it is given to the ground. Next is water heating, because we heat water, we can cover water with gas, firewood, that is, these are, in principle, inexpensive sources of thermal energy, well, and electricity, that is, there is already a direct dependence. If our greenhouse is 100 squares for heating the soil when laying 15 kilowatts will spend per day about 100 kilowatts will be consumed by such a greenhouse only for heating the soil in the winter period. Because it will, you can say, work all night, heating the ground, and during the day it will be easier because natural solar insolation has not been cancelled and it will partially accumulate in the ground. This is how heating systems are selected. This is how heating systems are calculated and used. If you are still only at the stage of designing your greenhouse, think about heating the soil. You have already figured out what types of soil heating there are and use it to get good and large harvests. Live in harmony with nature and in the rhythm of progress. Until new meetings.